Hi, guys. Welcome to the Church Split. My name is Will, and you know what we do here. We help you escape your church's echo chamber, learn to think biblically, and challenge the status quo, which always needs challenging. But first, don't forget to do the internet things, like and subscribe and all the stuff that if you don't know what you're doing, I can't help you. And if you haven't done it yet while you're watching this video, I'm probably not going to convince you to do so as we go. Anyway, so all the joking aside, I do want to make sure I mention here that this is part of a network. So if you actually do like the Church Split, check out the One Life Network down in the description below with Trinity Radio and One Life. You will enjoy their content far better than my own. So if you don't give me a like and subscribe, at least give them. But enough about that. Let's talk about podcasting. All right. As you listen to a podcast that's talking about podcasts that beat another podcast. So, okay, let's talk about it. So when I ask you about podcasts, best podcasts, the top podcasts in the world, what comes to mind? Guarantee you just thought Joe Rogan. If it didn't at least cross your mind, you're living under a rock, you're a hermit, and you should be ashamed of yourself because do you even like culture, bro? Like, anyway, Joe Rogan has been known to be the top podcast in the world. His YouTube channel alone has over 18 million subscribers. He's huge. A lot of people love him. A lot of people hate him. Love him or hate him, doesn't matter. He is the king in this world, and everyone knows it. But here's what's crazy. A Christian podcast, specifically Catholic, beat the Joe Rogan Experience. That is saying something. Now, I know some people are going to get all sorts of worked up because they're going to be Protestants and evangelicals are saying that Catholics aren't Christian, but whatever, you're wrong. So Catholics are Christian, even though I'm not a Catholic myself. Anyhow, the podcast is called A Rosary in a Year. And it beats, it says right here that they beat the Joe Rogan Experience for number one. And I have some thoughts on this as to how that happened and why. Let's go down the rabbit hole. The quick success of a podcast dedicated to the Rosary shows that listeners have a desire to deepen their relationship with God through prayer. In recent years, Ascension has demonstrated that the listening public desires a deeper understanding of the scriptures and church teachings with two monumentally successful podcasts, The Bible in a Year, I've heard of that one, and The Catechism in a Year, both hosted by Father Mike Schmitz. Now, Ascension is showing widespread desire to grow closer to God through prayer with the popularity of its latest hit podcast, The Rosary in a Year. You're noticing they have a lot of a whatever thing in a year. Pretty good marketing, which has quickly become the number one podcast on Apple. Get this, guys. The show only began in November, but it quickly rose to number 6 in the new podcast chart in just its first week. By December 30th, 2024, The Rosary in a Year had secured the number 1 spot on the religion and spirituality category. But by New Year's Day, the fledgling podcast had risen to be the top podcast on Apple, holding the number 1 among all categories. So not just religion and spirituality. It continued to hold the position even on January 2nd, standing in front of the Bible Recap and the Joe Rogan Experience. For Father Mark Mary Ames, host of Rosary in a Year, the desire to pursue a relationship with God through prayer is not especially surprising. In a press release, he suggested that no matter how advanced the world gets or what it offers, we want God. And this is by far true. We are seeing a rise in a desire for true spiritual reformation in our culture. And it's because our culture has degraded so much. And instead of a reformation, we're seeing a deformation in our culture where more and more things are just falling apart. The marriage and the family falling apart. Feminism is telling our young ladies all sorts of lies about what to look for in relationships, about what to look for in men, or whether or not men are even worth it at all. Men might be garbage, all of those things. In addition to that, culture is telling men that they're terrible and that they're awful, and if you're a conservative or a Christian or whatever, you're a sexist, racist, bigoted, homophobe, you're getting all that stuff. And now we're telling boys can be girls can be boys. We are giving puberty blockers to children where that's destroying their bodies. Because of all the things that we're doing, is it any wonder that people are because we kicked the church out, right? We got mad at the church a while ago. So we kick it out, right? And I don't like all your rules. And then they see what it's like when no one has rules and no one values anybody, and we do exactly as the world wants. And you can tell that people are starting to look over a little bit and go, what did we leave behind? What did this cost us? And the fact of the matter is, it costs too much. And people are beginning to realize that. I think that's one of the big reasons that we're starting to see this increase in interest towards spirituality, especially Catholicism and Orthodoxy is what we're seeing a huge growth in. As an evangelical pastor, that doesn't look too good for my salary. But actually, joking aside, I'm really happy to see people going that direction. I don't care where you stand on that issue. It is objectively better that people be Catholic than to be nothing at all, period. All right. So in his comments, he recalled the election of Pope St. John Paul II, who, by the way, was super based. I actually did not mind John Paul. Anyway, in 1979, when the newly elected Pope John Paul II was returning to communist-controlled Poland for the first time as a Holy Father, which is weird, in response to his words, the crowd of over 1 million people cried out, "We want God, we want God, we want God." I can't help but see this cry being echoed by millions of people who have participated in Bible in a year, Catechism in a year, and now Rosary in a year. By the way, I can already see like if that event happening. I actually should go back into some news articles from 1979 because I can guarantee you that there is some sort of crazy journalist out there, Christian journalist, who said that as soon as the Pope showed up, they all screamed, "We want God," and therefore they're making the Pope God. Like I can see that being a thing, or it has maybe Protestantism and Catholicism, maybe the world in general wasn't so degraded back then, but I could put money down that happened. Anyway, Rosary in a Year at #1 among all podcasts marks the 5th time Ascension's program have reached the top spot since 2021. So it's not the first time. It is no easy feat to achieve such popularity, especially right out the gate, but it is even harder to hold. Although Ascension's podcasts run for 365 days each, January 2 represents only the 39th day in which one of their podcasts has been #1. It is, however, possible that the Rosary in a Year may draw more participation during 2025, year of Jubilee. Of the quick success of Rosary in a Year, Ascension CEO Jonathan Strait commented, "The success of our podcast reflect a growing desire in our culture to seek spiritual connection and purpose. Being at the top of the charts once again is a testament to the hard work of our team in leveraging digital media to reshape how people engage with Catholic content." Now, I want to talk about that for a moment here. We have a spiritually starving world right now. And that is very real. I see it in young people when I work with them. I see it in the general culture at large. There's a vacuum here. And it is so true that people really do want God. Is it any surprise? I mean, if the Christian worldview is true and we're creating God, the image of God, then of course. And then also the fact that these people actually see the value of the internet. One of the things when as a millennial, and there's a lot of things people have to say about millennials, and a lot of them are true. But one of the things that was always frustrating as a millennial was also hearing the fact that the internet's a waste of time and all of this stuff, and people like blasted at you for being a computer geek. Like I remember I was like working on the computers a lot, and I mean a lot of people said I needed to learn a real skill. Now they all call me asking for tech support. But joke's on you. But the point is that sometimes we need to leverage the tools we have. And it's cool to see that the Catholic Church has done that, and many other churches have done that as well, where it's like the internet can be a new mission field. It can be a new way to reach people that you've never reached before. I'll never forget the time I got an email from someone across the world that had their life changed because of a guest I had on and interviewed. It was crazy to me, but that is the reality, and it's good to see that sort of thing. We have a country, we have a world that has removed God, but they didn't realize the price tag, because the reality is every idea, every thought has consequences. There is a price tag that has to be paid. So depending on your worldview, you might have to pay a much bigger price tag if you start evangelizing for that worldview. Kind of cracks me up because there's been atheists who said, I can't remember which one off the top of my head, and I think it was Dawkins, but I can't remember. But there's many atheists who are determinists. They believe free will is an illusion. We don't actually have free will, that our wills are actually bound by our nature, our nurture, and basically the way we're pre-programmed through our DNA. But we should live as if, they said, our free will is real. Otherwise, it will drive you mad. And all I hear when I hear that is, oh, so you want to try to live in a way that is inconsistent with your worldview. We can't live properly then in truth on your worldview. We can't, because there's a price to be paid. If you accept the fact that you actually have no choices, none of them are free, well, then you're kind of stuck, aren't you? Every bad thing you've ever done is because you couldn't help it, and that's all there is to it. People, I think, are tired of those sorts of answers. I think they're becoming more and more tired of this idea that there's only matter and that's all that matters. People are starting to wake up, and that's good. And I know, again, there's going to be people who are like, well, I was raised Catholic and they believe X, Y, Z, and they don't like. Still, it is better for people to believe in the risen Christ than for them to not believe in anything at all. You know what? The Catholic Church might be mistaken. Who knows? Maybe I'm mistaken. Maybe their things are true. I don't think they are. There's too many things within the Catholic Church that I disagree with, I think, for me to ever convert to Catholicism in good conscience. But I will say that I would rather somebody be part of that church and serve their communities and be a light for Christ and have traditional marriage values and raise boys and girls, as image bearers of God. And because here's the other thing, and this is uncomfortable territory as well, for as far as this, like a little diatribe I have about people who are anti-Catholicism. So there was a point in time before I took this job, I actually interviewed for a right to life organization. Essentially, they were for anti-abortion. They were all about trying to do different efforts for single mothers, and go get funding to keep that message, to help single moms, to educate people on what is abortion, those sorts of things. And when I was being interviewed for that process, one of the things they mentioned was they asked directly, how do I feel about the Catholic Church? And I was like, well, I'm not Catholic, but X, Y, Z. And then they revealed to me that the Catholic Church is their number one financial supporter. And whenever they need anything done for the right to life, every parish is all over it when they call. And then they call Protestant and evangelical churches, and Protestant evangelical churches oftentimes give them the runaround. They don't actually talk to them. They're scared of the controversy. And all I'm thinking is, yet we have the gall to sit there and go, but we disagree with your little doctrine when we aren't being the hands and feet of Jesus Christ. So I don't want to hear about it when it comes to Catholicism. Like, I've seen this happen time and time again. They're the largest church in the world. No, you do not have to agree with everything. I certainly don't. And I don't like everything that they teach. And some of it I think is detrimental. I think some of it muddies the waters. But I also think some of it is really good. And I think that there's more to be respected there than people want to. And bottom line is, this is good. This is objectively good. It is better for someone to listen to Rosary in a year than it is for them to listen to the Joe Rogan podcast, which is half the time about psychedelics. Okay? It is objectively better. And it's so cool to start seeing Christian media reaching the top of charts, being put on the Joe Rogan Experience, beating the Joe Rogan Experience. And I'm hoping that we are this close to seeing a revival. And the reason why I think we actually are close to seeing possibly a revival, that or it's going to be the end of all things, is because it seems like we're on this tipping point. And that's why. It's because we seem to be on a tipping point where things are about to go so far downhill that there's no recovery, and Christians, buckle up. You're about to be a huge minority, and things are just going to get, be hard for a while. We're about ready to see a true revival because people are starting to wake up and see what is good and what is true. And also they're starting to see the fact that maybe there's something more to this existence than being an accident, right? Because if there's no God, you're just a space accident. It's all you are. You are meaningless matter. You'll never matter. And you have no morality, no right, no wrong, no ultimate meaning to anything, which is not a way that many people could live their lives. I think people are starting to notice some of those things, and they want to pursue something greater than themselves. And we ought to. That's why we're told to seek justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with our God, to be image bearers of Christ, and to ultimately be a light to the world. And I'm so thankful to start seeing this sort of thing go. It's nuts. It's a crazy, it's a wild time to be alive, folks. Wild time to be alive. So anyhow, y'all, I hope you enjoy this. Y'all, man, you can tell I went to school in Tennessee. Sometimes that comes out. I apologize. Or for all my Southern folks out there, I'm sure you enjoyed it. Anyhow, guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Church Split. We'll see you next time. So may God's grace dwell with you all richly. Take care and God bless.